So today we arrive at Station 9 on our journey through the Stations of the Cross. This particular station is the last of the stations that we can't find in Scripture. Station 9 is Jesus falls a third time. Again, it's not a stretch to say that if Jesus fell a third time, he would need help. We've seen in the first fall that Jesus needed the help of Simon the Cyrene, and he got that help. In the second fall, he got the help from Veronica. And so in this fall, even though no one has mentioned, it makes sense that somebody would help in some way. And that's what I want to talk to you today about, is the blessing that we receive when we are helped. You know, last time we talked about a fall, we talked about when others are wanting to help, letting them help us, and the blessing they receive from that. Today is the blessing we receive from letting others help us. Most of the time in the church, we focus on the blessing of serving, of helping, of doing for others, but we don't seem to talk a lot about the blessing that is received when we are helped and served from someone else. I want to look at Luke 22 this morning to see what I'm getting at. This is verses 47 through 53. While he was still speaking, suddenly a crowd came, and the one called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He approached Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus said to him, "Judas, is it with a kiss that you are betraying the Son of Man?" When those who were around him saw that he was coming, they asked, "Lord, should we strike with the sword?" Then one of them struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. But Jesus said, "No more of this." And he touched his ear and healed him. Then Jesus came to the chief priests, the officers of the temple police, and the elders who had come from him. "Have you come out with swords and clubs as if I were a bandit? When I was with you day after day in the temple, you did not lay hands on me. But this is your hour and the power of darkness." So one of the things that's important to note in this particular story in Scripture is that it's in all four gospel accounts. As you read the gospel accounts, there are some things that are only in certain ones. There are some things that are only in 3 and not in another. But there are also some things that are in all 4. And I want to encourage you to take special note when those things happen in all 4, because it's significant that all 4 of the gospel writers wanted this information shared. They needed this story to be out there. There's something we're meant to learn from what's going on here at this moment in time. Now, I also know that many of you are familiar with this arrest scripture and all the things that were going on. But what I want to focus on this morning as we talk about the blessing that we receive from being helped, from being served, is what went on in verses 50 and 51, and I'll read those to you again. Then one of them struck the slave of the high priest and cut off his right ear. But Jesus said, "No more of this." And he touched his ear and healed him. Usually when this scripture is talked about, we focus on Peter because he's the one who did the cutting. He's the one with the sword. We totally forget about the servant or the slave. He's only named in one of the 4 gospel accounts. Does anyone know that name? Come on, let's have the same excitement we had when I asked the last question. His name's Malchus. The Gospel of John tells us that. Now, we are not told if Malchus was a high-ranking servant or slave, or if it was something in the middle. All that we're told is that he's the high priest's servant. Now, to get at what I want to talk about this morning, I want you to put yourselves in the shoes of Malchus. That's okay to do when you read Scripture. When you're reading it and you read about these people, the things they experience, it's okay to stop and pause and wonder and imagine for a moment, what if that was me? What if I was that person that this is happening to? I promise you that things did not go as Malchus had planned them to. On this evening, in this one moment, his life changes twice, seconds apart from each other. The first change that happens is when he has his ear cut off. When this happens, that meant more than likely he could no longer serve as the high priest's servant or slave. In Leviticus, one of the rules for those serving in the priesthood was that they could have no physical deformities. And that same prohibition was probably applied to the people that they traveled with. And so it would have extended to a servant or a slave of the high priest as well. So in a moment, Malchus has conceivably lost his livelihood. I'll be honest with you, it didn't really matter if you were a high servant or a low servant or slave serving the high priest. It was probably a good gig. It was better than others. And honestly, this seemed to be Malchus's identity. Because in 3 of the Gospels, they don't even give his name. They just say servant or slave of the high priest. It seems like this is how he is known. And so in a moment, Malchus has lost his livelihood. He's lost his identity. In a moment, Malchus's identity becomes the guy with one ear. Or the guy who used to be the high priest's servant. How does that sound? But then Jesus stops. Jesus steps in. Jesus heals him and makes him whole, which is the second identity change. Within seconds of each other, imagine the whirlwind that Malchus is feeling from, oh no, what do I do? To now he is healed. And now he's not still just the high priest's servant or the guy who formerly served the high priest. Now he is Malchus, the man that Jesus healed. He's Malchus, the man Jesus made whole. I promise you there were other people there. That's the story you tell other people, right? No? We wouldn't tell that story? I'm going to let you know. If I saw it, I'm telling it. If I saw it, I'm going to text Judah back in the back. I was like, Judah, I got to tell you this thing I just saw. I'm going to tell Denise. I'm going to tell Jean back in the back. I'm going to tell anybody I see. I saw this crazy thing. So this story, this idea of his ear gets cut off and then Jesus heals him. Whenever Malchus is out wandering around town, that's who he is now. He's the guy that Jesus healed. That's Malchus, the servant or the slave of the high priest. Jesus healed him. Jesus touched him. Jesus made him whole. Malchus has become a living, breathing, walking testimony to the love, power, and grace and mercy of Jesus Christ. Malchus has experienced Jesus helping and serving him. Malchus has been blessed to get to still have 2 ears. He's been blessed to conceivably keep his job. His life has been changed. What happened to Malchus is what I'm getting at when I say that we receive a blessing from being served or from being helped. And sometimes that blessing is a change of identity. Sometimes that blessing is we're being set on a course in a direction that we're meant to go. But maybe as I share this with you, the instance with Malchus isn't really resonating. Maybe it's something that's like, yeah, I've read that a lot, but I don't really get it. Let me share with you a more modern example. And as always, I'm going to talk about me because I know me better than I know you. So I was a pastor in the Nazarene church in Alma. I went from a Methodist church in Michigan, where everything I did was awesome and fantastic, and I was really impressed with myself, to this Nazarene church in Alma. And I went with a big head, thinking how awesome I was. And the exact opposite happened at the Nazarene church in Alma. For everything that went right in Clio, everything went wrong in the Nazarene church in Alma. It all started when I got there, and within a week, the pastor's wife, who was also the matriarch of the church, didn't like me. And so she started to talk to people about me. Do we really need this guy? What's he really bringing? And so she was working against me. And then from that point, everything I did failed. Didn't matter what it was. Didn't matter how much work I put in. And it all came to a head when actually the pastor of the church and the Sunday school director started to try and plan youth events without my knowledge. Because I walked in on one of their special meetings and they were talking about it. That was the moment where the Nazarene church almost broke me. That was the moment that I went home to my house and I was in tears. It was the closest to burnout and quitting ministry that altogether I have ever felt. It's like, if this is how it is, if this is where it's at, everything I do is a failure, they're doing stuff without me, this might not be my place. I can't go on. I can't do. And after I realized part of the problem was my big-headedness and my stubbornness, I got a phone call from a church in Florida. It's a Methodist church, and I didn't know at the time that they had already decided to hire me before I ever went there. I thought I was going for an interview. When I got there, they're like, let's talk about salary. You're hired. And I'm still struggling with ministry things and where I'm at, but I accepted the position. And what happened is the kids that I worked with, the youth there, ministered to me as much as I ministered to them. As they learned from me, I learned from them. As I wanted to bring hope and healing in their lives, they brought hope and healing into mine. Those kids are the reason that I stand here before you today. The blessing that I received from them, from their help and their service, was their love to me and a reinvigoration of my passion and my calling to share God with people. I went from burnout, wanting to quit, almost broken, to I'm excited to serve, I'm excited to do, I'm excited to follow where God leads. through their help and through their service, they put me back on the path that God had intended for me as I was about to step off of it. So what does that mean to us? What is this story of Malchus, the story I just shared with you? What does this mean, really, this idea of the blessing that we get when others help us? I can't answer that for you personally today because I don't know what you're going through in life. I don't know what brokenness you may be suffering. I don't know what things may be going on that are pushing and pulling you in all kinds of directions. But I can tell you, though, well, I can't tell you exactly what the blessing is. I can tell you that there is a blessing that you receive from the person that helps you, from the person that serves you, from the person that steps in and says, I'm here to love you. I can tell you that it might be a healing that they bring through God, or it might be a picking you up and putting you back on the path that you're meant to be on. It might be that what they are doing for you is the thing that God has prepared for you to do, to paraphrase Philippians. They're putting you back on the path to do that thing. I can tell you it's another reason that we need to let people step in and do for us. We need to let people step in and serve, step in and help. And I also want to share this with you. It's also the reason we need to be thankful that we have those people in our lives. We need to not push them away. We need to not tell them no. We need to not put up a wall between us and the people that are trying to help. Not everybody necessarily knows who those people are when they come. Anyone who wants to come in the name of God, as God has motivated them, as God has pushed them to love us, to help us, we need to let them help, not just for what it does for them, but for the blessing that we may receive from God through it. There are so many stories, I bet you all have them, of somebody who came into your life at some point, or some group of people, when things just weren't right, when you're feeling beat up and broken, when you're feeling like I don't even know why I'm going to go forward or where I'm going to go. And they're stepping in, their love, their care, their service, their help, whatever it was they did. You stepped up and you went forward. You got back up with their help. You moved forward. Again, I don't know what this looks like for you today, because I don't know where you are. But I do know that God is sending someone into your life in some fashion, in some way, because that's how God works. God uses us as his people to reach into the lives of others. And this morning, as Lauren comes up to lead us in our last song, I want to encourage you during that last song, if you don't feel like singing is what God's calling you to do, but God's calling you to contemplate, to reflect this idea, this message, who may be coming to help, what help do I need? Do that. This closing song is called the Song of Response. And the whole premise behind the Song of Response is we're meant to respond to whatever it is that God is saying to us. I think sometimes we might get wrapped up in everybody's doing the same thing, and it's going to look weird if I do something different. Well, I just want to share with you, those people that are responding to the urgings of God always look weird because they're doing something different. So it's okay. If God's calling you to not stand and to not sing, but to sit and to contemplate and to think and to pray, if God is calling you to go sit with somebody else and say, I need prayer. I need somebody to pray with me today. If God's calling you to come and put a rock on the Ebenezer, whatever God calls you to in the Song of Response, do it. Whatever God's calling you to do, whatever God's leading you to do, it is right. And nobody's going to be like, wow, that person was weird. They did the weird thing. Because we're all here together to move closer to God, to be more of who God made us. And so, all who are able, all who are willing, all who God is leading, let's stand and let's sing.